After days of making the beef broth and a morning of browning some meat, we are finally ready to can up some beef stroganoff. So the recipe that I'm following is on page, that doesn't have a page, let's see here, 73, 74, 75, 275 in the all-new Ball Book of Canning. And the recipe is for beef stroganoff. Now this recipe here gives you the ingredients for 2 quart jars. So for every quart jar, you're going to need a pound of beef, half a cup of mushrooms, half a cup of onion, and 2 tablespoons of tomato paste, as well as a teaspoon of salt, a half teaspoon of black pepper, 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire, a teaspoon of thyme, a teaspoon of parsley, and a garlic clove. And then you're going to top that all off with some beef broth. So I thought that I had a lot of mushrooms down in my freezer, and I went down to go grab them, and I can't find them. So I know I have a little bit of mushrooms in my freezer up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to save those for using them when I actually make up the beef stroganoff for dinner tonight. So unfortunately, these jars will not have any mushrooms, but I like celery in my beef stroganoff, so I'm actually going to throw in a half a cup of celery instead of the half cup of mushrooms. And I don't have any fresh onions, so I'm going to be throwing in a tablespoon of onion flakes in lieu of that. And the other difference that I'm going to be doing is I believe it calls for a teaspoon of thyme for every quart. And I have found in doing the herb potatoes that thyme gets a little too, it intensifies with the canning process. So I'm going to cut it down to a half a teaspoon, and I might even go a quarter teaspoon. I don't like that overpowering flavor. So I think I'm going to tone it down just a bit, just because when I make my beef stroganoff, thyme is not normally something that I put in mine. So make it to your liking. That's what it's all about, right? So another change that I'm making is it calls for some tomato paste, and I'm going to go ahead and just omit that. I don't want to open up a thing of tomato paste and have to waste any. So if I feel like that's something that's needed for flavor or consistency or whatnot when I open it, I can add it then. But honestly, I don't. That's, again, not something that I normally put in when I'm making my own. So I'm not going to worry about it. Is it. So just the beef broth. So what I'll do is, I think I showed you guys this with the turkey broth as well, but the first time I make this, I cook it for a couple of days, and with the turkey, I did it in the crock pot, but with the beef broth, I had this big pan and then the crock pot. And I mixed them both together. And I did not add any salt, any seasoning, nothing to the broth as I was making it. And I just filtered it through a regular colander just to get the big stuff out. So now when I put it into my jars, I'll be using the sieve, and I'll catch any of the little bits that are too big to make it through. There will still be some that are small enough to make it through and into the jars, but those I'm not as concerned about as the really, really large chunks. So and we're going to go ahead and just debubble these, and we're going to be filling these to an inch of head space. So I'll double check those. Maybe a little bit more. Not much. That's good. And let me get paper towel here, and we'll go ahead and wipe the rims off. And of course I forgot my rings. So let me go back and, ooh. All right, so there's that jar. I did brown up a pound of the beef stroganoff that I had gotten out, and that is sitting there waiting for me to put in a jar just to mock can it, so I can show you what it would be like if I opened up a jar and just used it, because I don't want to can all this today and then today open up a jar. I want it to sit on the shelf for a while. And so normally what I'll do is, if I'm canning something like this, I'll make up enough of the meat that that's what we'll have for dinner as well. And that's what I did, but I'll pretend like it's coming right out of the jar for you guys. All right, I think that might get blocked a little bit, but doesn't that look good in there? I think this is going to turn out really, really well. Probably going to be a recipe that I end up doing more of, but we'll find out tonight. All right, so let's get this last one done and in the canner. All right, so while that is coming up to pressure, I just thought I'd show you what I was going to do with the pan that I browned all the meat in. I'm taking my tongs here and just kind of washing them in the hot broth, getting all that goodness off of them. I'm going to ladle in a couple of ladles of the hot broth, and I'll get a spatula or something to scrape the bottom, get all that goodness off, and then I'll just throw all this back in with my broth. why lose that flavor that is sitting on the bottom of that pan? All right, I'll work that for a few minutes and then I'm going to toss that back in with my big pot. Right, so dinner is done. There's my plate. We have the beef stroganoff. This one was not canned. This I just put in the jar just to set aside so that I could show you what it would be like if I was to can it. So the meat is not going to be as tender as it would be if it went through the canning process, but it'll still be delicious. So let's give that a taste test. That is good. And I don't think the thyme is overpowering at all. That's really good. And home canned green beans. I don't think I've done a video on these yet. I can't remember. I did a whole bunch this summer, but I don't know if I had started the channel yet. So if I haven't, look for those this summer.